This video is going to be all about comparing the Jeep Wrangler JL to the Jeep Gladiator. I'm going to go into on and off-road differences between the platforms, talk a little bit about modifying these platforms, and which one, in my experience, really is the more practical of the two vehicles. All right, let's get to it. Let's first dive into the major similarities and differences. From the rear doors forward, the Gladiator and JL Wrangler are virtually identical. They share the same front suspension and dash layout. So your view from the driver's seat is going to be the same no matter which vehicle you choose. Both can now be had with power seats and the new infotainment system, and you get the benefit of better sound deadening if you opt for a 24 model year. While many may view the Gladiator as just a Wrangler with a truck bed, the reality is that from the rear doors back, the Gladiator is completely different. Not only does it get a unique rear chassis, but the suspension configuration is specific to the Gladiator as well. Yes, both the JT and JL have 5-link coil-sprung suspensions, but the Gladiator aligns the arms more closely atop one another. This is similar to what you'll find on the Ram platform and makes a sizable difference in handling overall. I'll get more into this later in the video. It's also worth noting that the steering geometry is the same, but the steering gearbox ratios are different between the two platforms. This also plays a role in the vehicle's handling characteristics overall. Another key difference is the wheelbase and overall length. A 4-door Wrangler Rubicon 392, for example, has a wheelbase of 118.4 inches and an overall length of approximately 16 feet. The Gladiator, on the other hand, has a much longer wheelbase at 137.3 inches and an overall length of 18 feet. While that extra 2 foot of length may determine if this vehicle will fit inside of your garage, from a performance standpoint, the added wheelbase makes the bigger difference between the two platforms. So let's talk about performance and specifically on-road handling. Despite the two vehicles being so similar appearing, each have their own distinct handling characteristics. If you drive a Rubicon version of each back to back, you will quickly find that the Wrangler feels a bit smoother overall and has a more balanced suspension feel. Now, it's not to say that the Gladiator doesn't have a smooth ride, but my big issue is the valving for the suspension. They're wildly different between the two. In my experience, the Gladiator suspension out back feels very undervalved, which equates to a very bouncy and less planted ride. An aftermarket shock upgrade can tame this issue, but that's a pretty big investment to need for a brand new vehicle. Now, both Rubicon Gladiators and Wranglers get the same front brake calipers and rotors, but if you opt for a 392 or Extreme Recon 35 package, you get a larger rear rotor that's 14 inches. This is likely due to the new for 24 full float rear axle that comes on certain Rubicon models. This gives the Wrangler an edge up overall in the axle department. This is a good transition into powertrains, and the fact is the Wrangler has a lot to offer while the Gladiator currently is fairly limited. As of making this video, you can only order the 24 Gladiator with a 3.6 liter Pentastar V6. While you can still find JT's new on the lot with the 3 liter Eco Diesel, Jeep has stated that it's officially being phased out. I do know that a hybrid option is coming for the Gladiator, as Jeep has stated, but we don't know the time frame of that, and it looks like it's going to be using the same turbocharged 2 liter found in the 4xe. For those holding out for a 392 option in the Gladiator, I've been told that sadly it's not coming. It's also all but confirmed at this point that the new Hurricane Inline 6 will not show up in the Wrangler or Gladiator. This is primarily due to the fact that the engine is actually 5 inches longer than the 392, so it simply doesn't fit. If this is true, this may mean that it will be a while before we see any major powertrain upgrades for the Wrangler or Gladiator. While the Wrangler does have a few powertrain options, none are more exciting than the 6.4 liter V8 engine offered in the 392 edition. For 24, it is the final year of the 392, so if you were thinking about it, don't wait. I like the 3.6 liter with the 8-speed automatic. That powertrain has served me very well over the years. I'm a bit slow to adapt to the 4xe, mostly due to the well-documented growing pains of that new platform. Jeep is going to make it better. They've got no choice. But if I'm buying a new Wrangler today, my pick would be the 3.6 liter if the 392 wasn't on the table. In terms of transmissions, though you can still get a manual 6-speed in both the Gladiator and the Wrangler, they too have been plagued with recalls and issues. If you are absolutely dedicated to growing gears, go for it. But for me, I would much prefer the 8-speed automatic. I feel like that transmission is more reliable, it gives you a better gear range, and it's fantastic off-road. The next thing to bring up is the most obvious difference, and that is the bed. A 5-foot bed is small in the pickup world, but a massive amount of space compared to a Wrangler. Out of the gate, the Wrangler's covered storage is obviously more ideal for hauling groceries and day-to-day items, and they've got fantastic aftermarket support to make it very organized out back. Putting a bed cover on the Gladiator will quickly solve any issue of storage and expand your hauling needs greatly. In terms of hauling, a 2024 Wrangler can get you up to 5,000 pounds of towing capacity, while a Gladiator can deliver up to 7,000 pounds. Payload numbers are very similar between the two platforms, but of course it's much easier to max out the Gladiator payload thanks to the bed and crazy amount of aftermarket support that there is for it. If you have a family of 4 as I do, I will weigh in here and say that the Gladiator with a bed cover or some type of bed cap is a much more preferred way to travel, as it simply offers more room for all of your gear. Yes, I've managed to squeeze everything that we need in the back of a 4-door Wrangler for a week-long vacation, but the Gladiator simply makes it easier. I also firmly believe that the bed makes the Gladiator a more practical vehicle overall between the two platforms. With so many racks, bed covers, and even complete bed conversions, the Gladiator can easily transition from a weekend wheeler to a work truck quite easily. The only time I've ever found the bed to be a hindrance is when I hit more serious off-road trails. This is a good time to transition into the big sticking point between these two vehicles, which is off-road performance. The biggest misconception about the Gladiator is that extra wheelbase and departure angle make it all but worthless off-road. That's simply not true. The only time the Gladiator's wheelbase is a genuine issue is in technical rock crawling. For the majority of easy to moderate off-road trails across the nation, the Gladiator's wheelbase will be fine. The only thing to note here is you are going to need a lift and larger tires to make it work better off-road. The Wrangler just has a better departure angle, it has a better breakover angle, it's clearly the better off-road vehicle. That being said, if you are going for off-road only, and that is your #1 requirement, I would definitely go with the Wrangler. However, going back to what I mentioned earlier about family trips, if you are hauling your whole family along on the trail, it is really nice to have that extra room in the bed. Of course, if you are part of the ever-expanding overland movement, the Gladiator is by far the better suited platform for that. Unfortunately, as of making this video, all you can get is a 33-inch tall tire on the Gladiator platform, and with that added wheelbase, you really need more lift and tire if you want to take this thing off-road on more than just a gravel back road. While you can get away with as little as 1 inch of lift on the Rubicon Gladiator to clear a 37-inch tall tire, I would recommend going with at least 3 inches of lift if you really want to take this thing off-road frequently. Pairing it with a good tire is especially important. I'm a big fan of the Nitto Trail Grappler, so if you're looking for a good tire that's a nice balance of real off-road performance and good on-road manners, I would take a look at that. On my 2020 Jeep Gladiator Rubicon you see here, it's running a 3-inch BDS suspension with a 38 by 1350 R17 Nitto Trail Grappler. So, which is the better vehicle? In my experience, the ride quality fuel economy, and overall interior comfort is so similar between the Wrangler and Gladiator that the only real question to ask yourself is, do you need a truck bed? Despite the fact that the Wrangler is the better off-road vehicle out of the gate, I believe the Gladiator is the more versatile of the two. The big difference with the Gladiator is that it will require some upgrades if you plan on taking it off-road, at least for more challenging trails, whereas something like the Wrangler with the 35 package is basically ready to go right out of the box. I'm still shocked that the Gladiator is selling so poorly, but that does mean that there are some crazy good deals to be had on new and used Gladiators. I would personally avoid the diesel engine and manual transmission, and I'll also weigh in and say that the new 24 interior with the added sound deadening is a sizable and noticeable upgrade over previous years. While I must admit that the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 392 is by far my favorite factory Jeep ever produced, it's extremely expensive and not nearly as practical as some of the other offerings. To me, at the end of the day, I think the Gladiator is actually the better overall value, but I need a truck bed more often than not. If you don't, I really think it comes down to dollars and cents and what you're going to do with the vehicle. Now, the last thing I want to touch on is there are a lot of different trim levels in the Wrangler and in the Gladiator. Overland, Mojave, Rubicon, you name it. There's a lot of options out there, and it really impacts the pricing and a lot of the off-road appointments. In general, I go for Rubicons. They have all of the off-road appointments that I'm really looking for, which is front and rear selectable lockers, great skid plates from the factory, and you get a 4-to-1 transfer case. So all of that is going to be beneficial for what I like to do for off-roading, and Rubicons tend to hold their resale value. So if you're somebody that doesn't keep a vehicle for a very long time, the Rubicon is usually the safer investment. Now, if you have any questions, just drop them in the comments. If you want to see some stuff that I'm working on behind the scenes, you can check me out on all social platforms at Ali Mansour Editor. I appreciate you guys watching, and if you did like this video, please don't forget to actually click like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps and allows us to continue to make these videos here on the Driving Line channel. As always, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on the trail soon. Take care.